This is Andy Purewal for Boxing Social in association with Betfred, and I'm delighted to be joined by promoter Frank Warren over Zoom. Frank, first and foremost, how have you been keeping?
I'm doing well. What about you, young man?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm very good. It's good to catch up, Frank. It's been a few weeks. We missed you at the Yard versus Spellman press conference. How's life been treating you? What have you been up to, obviously, aside from that fight night?
What have I been doing? We've just been working hard, trying to make more shows, make more fights, and that's really where we're at. And we'll be announcing, I think, another 4 or 5 dates this week.
We'll obviously come back to that fight night and just start off there as we haven't had a chance to speak. Anthony Yard with a stoppage victory against Spellman, the first man to stop him. What did you make of his performance?
I thought he did well. You know, he's had that, I mean, in what is it, a year or just over a year since he had his fight with Kovalev. He had time out. He had some terrible losses to his family, losing his grandmother and his dad. He obviously had that little run out in Spain, but that was a nothing fight. It was a tough fight, to come back for him. But I thought he'd done it extremely well. I thought he got the rust out of his system. It took him a while to get into it. Took him a couple of rounds to get in his stride, but he just, works on deck. Deck's a very brave fighter, comes to fight, and he just basically broke him down and took him apart over the rounds. Just kept stepping up a gear, and I thought he'd done a great job.
Obviously, Anthony's victory steps up the chances of us seeing the Lyndon Harper fight. It certainly seems to be that's what's next. When can we expect us to hear or see anything about that in terms of an announcement?
We're going to make an announcement at the end of the week, as I said, for the forthcoming fights, and that'll probably be one of them.
Just want to quickly touch on something with that fight as well, Frank. With Anthony's victory, on the back of it, Deck was given a 45-day medical suspension. Dillian White was only given a 28-day medical suspension on the back of his, what was a heavy knockout defeat to Alexander Povetkin. Just what do you make of that?
Well, I've got to be honest with you, I don't understand it. If Deck was 45 days, then the worst case, that should have been the same for White. I mean, that's what it should have been. But he when he got knocked out, he was not cold. He was given oxygen. I don't think so much. The idea of that's being suspended is they're not in the gym, they're not sparring, they're not training. Quite rightly so. They've been concussed. He got stopped on his feet, Deck, but in his way he was concussed. So I don't get what the rush is to get back into the ring. If somebody's knocked out badly, then you would think they would take a little bit more time out to recover from that. That's what that's my only sort of observation on it. Whether all fighters want to fight. All fighters want to fight. They'd fight every day if they could. That's the mentality they've got. But there are times when guys get hurt or get injured that they need, in my opinion, they need protecting from themselves, and the people around them should be looking at that and thinking to themselves, is it right to be putting them in so quickly? Because obviously, he's seeing out his ban, his suspension, then he's only going to have a short time training, and it involves again heavy sparring and so forth. So for me, me personally, I wouldn't be pushing a guy in that quickly, coming off of such a bad knockout.
Just to stick around that day, obviously the day before we saw Umar Sadiq out in Russia challenging Fedor Trudinov. He gave a brilliant account of himself, just fell short. What does this mean for Umar on the back of that performance? He took it on such short notice as well. Is the expectation that we should see him in fights of the same calibre, maybe obviously just with a proper camp behind him?
Well, he needs a good rest now. I mean, it was a tough fight. It was, as you say, 12 rounds, 12 tough rounds. He did give a great account of himself. He was, in fact, he got, I think it's more exhaustion than anything at in that last round where he got clipped. But he needs a good rest. He spent a bit of time in hospital out there under observation, and he'll come back now. And there's no rush to get him out. He'll want to get out. He'll want to be out like all fighters, as I said earlier. He'll want to be out straight away, but he needs a bit of rest. And obviously, the board he'll have his medical checkups, and before he gets back in the ring, obviously the doctors will look at the scans and so forth, see how he is.
Moving forwards to this week, Frank, obviously you've got the Taylor Kong Song fight headlining your bill at your call. Beneath that, Charlie Edwards' first fight at bantamweight against Carl Williams. What are you expecting to see from Charlie, especially with it being his first fight, 2 weights up from his original past weight?
Well, I'm glad to add a former world champion on our roster. He's a super little fighter. What does it mean for him? Look, he needs a run out. He needs a run out, and he might need another one before we can get him into a world title fight. Obviously, we all don't know what's going on at the moment. I mean, the government made these basically saying that they're not going to let even the test events now go forward for live audiences. So we don't, we're all a little bit in no man's land. All we can do at the moment is do the best we can for the fighters and for the fans, with basically having our hands tied. But obviously, it's paramount that the medical aspects and the safety aspects of everyone, while this COVID situation is going on, is looked after. So we will do the best we can to get him into a world title fight as soon as possible. And and to be honest, for him in a world title fight, it will need a live audience.
Frank, just touch on, you mentioned the kind of the government restrictions that are coming out, or talked about coming out. They're going to cancel the return of the testing events. We've seen they're bringing in curfews and that for restaurants and what have you once again. But just with the testing events, how damaging is that for the sport in your eyes?
It's damaging for all sport. I mean, everyone has moved forward, coming back, getting events on, in whatever sport it is. They've all done that on the basis we all thought by sort of the end of this month, early next month, we'll be able to be getting some bums on seats. That obviously can't happen now. So we're all very, very concerned. We're very, it's really, testing times for all sports, certainly for boxing. And, we're lucky we've got the cushion, Matchroom are the same, and I think MTK got some TV shows. The cushion of getting a TV revenue helps. However, the small hall shows that have, rely on their gates, they don't have TV coverage. They rely on that. So there's guys now not getting work and not be working. There's a lot of amateurs who are not fighting at the moment because there's no amateur boxing on. So are these guys going to continue, or are they going to go and do something else? And that's the worry. I hope we don't lose a generation of new young fighters, and fighters who just started off in the game who basically rely on it for their living and are not being able to work at the moment. So it's tough for everybody in every walk of life. But for boxing at the moment, these are going to be. I think we're going to go through a tougher situation now.
There's something I was about to ask you. What do you feel, when you look at it from your perspective, what do you think the long-standing impacts and effects could be of the pandemic and the certain restrictions and what have you that the government are bringing into place, whether that be the small hall shows kind of taking a real step back for a few years, or we losing certain amateur fighters who might not have the same interest in the sport? What do you feel the long-standing impacts will be?
Well, they already cancelled the Olympics this year, haven't they? Postponed them till next year. And I don't think until they get, and if they get a vaccine, I don't see there won't be any large gatherings. That's for sure. They're obviously the more people are socially mixing with each other, it's obviously causing more problems. We've seen the rise, the rates of infections on a daily basis rising, not just in this country, it's in nearly every country. Even countries who, when they did the first lockdown, countries like New Zealand and so forth, who really contained it, they're closing down certain areas. So it's very difficult times, and maybe this is going to be the situation for the next. They're talking today, the government. We're talking about the next 6 months, maybe 6 months or longer. I don't know. I have no idea because, and I don't think, by the way, anybody knows. It just changes on a daily basis. 1 minute you got to go out, let's all get back to work, so we want to try and get the country moving. The next minute, look, if you can work from home, stay at home. And I don't think you can't blame. I don't blame the government for that. I just think that they're relying obviously on advice from scientists, and scientists are telling them what they feel is the best way to handle this. the end of the day, the only way to handle it is to get a vaccine. And until we get that, I think we're all in a state of flux.
One fight which seems to have been affected by it a lot, and you've been asked about it quite a fair bit over his past 6-7 months, is Dubois Joyce. Given Daniel's age and given how old Joe is, they've both got those aspirations to go on to challenge for world titles. But in Joe's case, being a bit older, given the current circumstances, and I know how you've wanted to try and get fans in to watch that fight, to get the gate receipts in, but do you feel that there is a chance we might not see that fight now?
No, I'm hoping we will see it. I mean, at the end of the day, we're going to have to sit down, depending what, I mean, the Prime Minister tonight is going to make it a statement. We're trying to find out. We've been working and speaking with the, with government department regarding this and the Boxing Board of Control. Depending on where we are and what happens over the next couple of days, I think we'll all be sitting around the table. We've got to make some decisions, as to, is the fight going to happen this year or not? They're decisions we have to make, and the fighters. And for things like that to happen, you've got to look at financially how it stacks up.
What is the cut-off point in your own mind to try to make Dubois Joyce in kind of a time period?
In my own mind, I haven't got it in my own mind, to be quite honest, because, as I say, it keeps changing. There's no point me saying, right, if this is not done by November the 10th, for example, then we're going to pull the plug on it. Because who knows, maybe November the 11th, they'll say we'd have live audiences back. So we've just got, I think our cut-off point for everything is probably be around Christmas time. That's where we're going to be.
Could it happen behind closed doors, Frank?
I wouldn't want it to, for obvious reasons. I wouldn't want that to happen. I think the fight deserves a real live audience. I think you'll even get more out of the fighters. It's like we had that show. When was it? A couple of weeks ago. Was it a couple of weeks ago now? And we had that great fight on there with Denzel and with Mark. And that fight was a great fight to watch. But what a fantastic fight it would have been if there had been a live audience there. Can you imagine that atmosphere? And that's what I feel very sorry for the fighters. I mean, obviously there's a financial aspect of it, but I feel sorry for the fighters because that would even bring more out of it, and you'd get more into it. I mean, there's great fights, and then all the guys getting in the ring at the moment are doing a fantastic job to be doing what they're doing, and they're fighting in these environments. I mean, they're doing fantastic, and I take my hat off to them because and you look again, some of the home fighters, as we call them, some of the bad fighters that we look after. They're not fighting. They're not the home fighters anymore. They're just in neutral venues, which is going to be quite interesting on Saturday, I think, with Josh and Appinan's fight.
Just moving forwards, Frank, just to stick with the heavyweights though. Obviously, once again, we're waiting to hear something about Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, their third bout, their trilogy bout. A lot of rumours coming out about venues, outdoor venues in Vegas now. Where does the land lie with the fight, Frank? Do you think we will see it before the year's out?
Tyson wants to be in the ring before the year's out, and we're moving heaven and earth between us all to try and make it happen. In discussions in various territories, but everybody's affected the same as we are in the UK with this virus. It's causing all sorts of problems. So no one can guarantee anything at the moment.
Why do you feel that Deontay has been kind of quiet on it? We haven't really seen him coming out over social media or what have you. We've seen Tyson very active, seen yourself, Bob Arum, but certainly haven't really seen much of Deontay. Why do you believe that is?
Well, he's got a contract for the fight. That's all he cares about. And I'm sure once we get this situation sorted out with the venue and the date, I think you'll find it be very vociferous.
You've said that you're obviously looking towards the venues and what have you. Again, is there a cut-off point in your own mind for it?
Well, the cut-off point's the end of the year, isn't it? We've got to get it on. That's what we're all working towards. We're working at the moment. I think the working date is the 19th of December.
You mentioned Tyson he wants to be out regardless by the end of the year. If the Wilder fight doesn't happen for whatever reason, what names are you guys considering? Because it seems to be that all the heavyweights around the world are all kind of signed to different promoters.
Well, we're not even looking at any names at the moment. We're focusing at the moment on Deontay.
And just moving forwards, Frank, Jack Catterall mandatory with Jose Ramirez at WBO title. Can you update me on that and where things stand?
There's supposed to be a purse bid. I think it was supposed to be this week. It's been pushed back because of the virus. The WBO pushed it back. We've asked them we want to get it on sooner rather than later because we're willing to put the fight on over here. So we want to get that fight on. And Jack desperately wants it. He allowed, as a mandatory challenger, he allowed Ramirez to go for another fight. So now it's Jack's turn, and he wants his fight.
Jack's been mandatory for quite a while now. It seems to have been forever for Jack to have been mandatory. What do you make of his career and this step up now to world level? Do you feel like this is his time and it is his chance to become a world champion, his best chance?
Well, look, he could keep having tick-over fights, but I don't think that gets the best out of him. And I think what will get the best out of Jack is a massive challenge, and Ramirez is a massive challenge. So I want to see him in the ring with him. I think he can beat him. So we want to get the fight on.
And then a final thing from me, Frank, I'm sure everybody's asked you about it previously. Eddie Hearn, any updates for us on the meeting? We saw an article about TalkSport and a few others put out that he said that he'd like to meet up with you by the end of this month. Any update?
Not at the moment.
How much are you looking forward to it, Frank?
Oh, really? I don't sleep at night. It's all I think about.
Frank, I will leave you now and I'll leave you to enjoy it the rest of your day. It's been a pleasure to catch up with you.
And you, young man.
Thank you.
You look after yourself.